been, and we are continuing to talk about schools this morning. Parents are being asked by the government to keep their kids at home if possible, saying they're only open for the children of key workers or those who are vulnerable. But many schools are reporting a much higher number of kids coming in during the first lockdown. Merseyside and Cheshire executive member of the NASUWT Teaching Union, Damien McNulty, is going to be joining me in just a few moments. And for most of us, this past year is going to be one we'll never forget. We probably want to, but we'll never forget. And on the back of that, the Reader organisation is looking for Merseysiders to get involved in a project to create their very own commonplace book. These were popular in the 17th century as a way of documenting people's lives. We're going to be chatting to the heritage coordinator at Calderstones to tell you how you can get involved. All of that is to come between now and 9 o'clock.
Paul Beasley, BBC Radio Merseyside.
But it's 7 minutes past 8 at the moment. It seems like a long time ago, but it was actually only last weekend that the Prime Minister told parents to send your child to school on Monday. Do you remember that? Despite that was calls from teaching unions for schools to be closed due to concerns about the spread of the coronavirus. Fast forward to today, where we're now back in lockdown, with schools only open for children of key workers or those who are vulnerable. But there are reports of many more children in class than there were during the first lockdown. So how much difference has this made to those concerns? Damien McNulty is the Merseyside and Cheshire executive member for the NASUWT Teaching Union. He also teaches at a primary school in Knowsley. And Damien joins me on the line now. Good morning to you, Damien.
Good morning, Paul.
Now, Damien, it's only a week since some unions were telling staff to stay at home if they felt unsafe going into work. Has this lockdown actually led to a dramatic reduction of numbers in the classroom?
In the vast majority of cases, that hasn't happened, and it's because of a message of chaos and confusion from national government. You're right to quote Boris Johnson, encouraging all children of critical workers and vulnerable children to come into work, to come into school. But quite clearly, that places some incredible demands on schools. I mean, effectively, some schools across Merseyside yesterday, primary schools in particular, we're focusing on that now because secondary schools are closed. We're open to the vast majority of children. Now, that's not going to work in terms of driving down infection rates and transmission rates.
Do you think, though, Damien, you're a teacher yourself. You teach in a primary school in Knowsley, and I'm not asking you to comment about your school. In your position with the NASUWC, you'll have a broad overview. Do you think some parents are, in an old term, swinging the lead, really, and just trying it on to get their kids into school when they shouldn't really be doing that?
Well, I think parents, like teachers, know the best place for their child is actually in school. But let's make no mistake, virtually every one of your news headlines this morning were about the scale of the coronavirus, the pressure on the ambulance service, the significant outbreak at Liverpool Football Club. Society, our parents across Merseyside, of all critical workers have a part to play. If you can keep your child at home, you should. If you've got the facility to do that, you must, to help with the national effort and to stop the sad and untimely death of so many people that we're hearing on a daily basis on the news.
Now, this time round, we're into lockdown 3 now, aren't we? Many more businesses are still open, manufacturing shops operating click and collect. More parents are likely to be required to work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every parent who is asked to go into work is classed as a key worker. Do you think, Damien, there is a clear understanding and a clear criteria for head teachers to apply as to who is a key or a critical worker?
No, there isn't. And let's be clear, the government have put head teachers and senior leaders in schools in an impossible position at virtually no notice yet again. Head teacher colleagues are trying absolutely their best to provide the service and the education for the most vulnerable and critical workers. In effect, what head teachers need to do is ask every parent if they feel they need a place for evidence of their work. And also, of course, evidence that work is required across the 5 days that school are open. If any critical workers perhaps are part-time workers or shift workers and they don't need and they're not at work on a particular Monday to Friday day that school is open, then their child should be kept at home with them and they can access remote education. We need to reduce the numbers in schools. Schools are are a bed of transmission. In primary school settings, it's very difficult, particularly with the younger children, to keep them socially distanced. It's not, it's just not a reasonable request. Those children interact with each other, and then they go home to their home environments. It puts other family members at risk if lots of people say, "I'm a critical worker, my child needs to be in school," when really they don't on that particular day.
Now, we were speaking in the first hour of the show to a head teacher from Woodlands Primary School in Ellesmere Port, Dr. Victoria Carr, and one of the points she made, which I hadn't really thought about, is that when the teachers are teaching, they've now got two things to balance. They've got the kids who are in school and the kids who are home learning as well and maybe doing online stuff. Just explain to us, Damien, your members, what sort of pressure are they experiencing at the moment?
Well, that's a really good example. And I mean, the least pressure solution is for the remote learning offer, whatever that method's going to be, whether it's a recorded lesson, directing them to resources online, providing some information packs or activities for children to do where they're working with their hands in terms of those activities. Those activities must be the same at home and in school. A number of schools, we believe, are unfairly asking teachers to try and teach in a classroom environment, let's say with half of the children, and then also provide resources that may be different or may be the same to the children at home. There shouldn't be a different educational offer for those children that come into school, because that would not be fair on those parents and children that are working at home. So, it's a time issue, it's a resourcing issue. There's only so many hours in the day, and teachers can't do twice the work and double the job. They're not work shy. All our members know the best place for children is in school. But we can't have teachers going down sick. Unfortunately, we have, we very sadly had a member of NASUW die with COVID-19 from St Edward's College in October. And the last thing we want to do is have any education professionals pass away with COVID-19, become sick of long-term issues, perhaps, and also for the children to take those, act as that potential in their home environment whenever they go back to home after a day at school.
Damien, just tell us how concerned your members are about the kids who are not coming into school. The kids from vulnerable families, kids where they don't have the kit available to do online learning. Are you worried they're going to be losing out and they're going to fall dramatically behind?
Our members will do absolutely everything they can to ensure that the children have the resources they need and the families have the resources they need, whether that's access to the internet, or if they know that those are particular challenges, that they have access to physical materials, whether it's textbooks, worksheets, packages that schools will put together. Our members are very happy to do that. But what we do know is very clearly, whenever children return to school on the 1st of September, there wasn't the significant gaps in learning across all age ranges that you would not necessarily have expected. Yeah, there were particular issues, perhaps with access to reading materials during the lockdown for some children across the primary settings. But you know what? Those children returned to school to safe environments, welcoming environments, and it was back to business as usual. And those that had fell behind caught up really, really quickly. So we've got no concerns about children having some time away from the school environment, not in the same setting as they normally are, but we will provide quality materials and access to resources for them to engage with education if they're not able to be in school and they're staying at home to do their bit.
School and parent relationships at the end of the day are very much a partnership, aren't they? We all know that, kids come home, parents got to encourage them to do the homework and things like that. With the situation as it is now, where certain criteria is allowing some parents to send the kids in, as you've just said, if they're working themselves at home and they can look after the kid on that day, don't send them in. And this is being applied. Do you think there's a danger here of a bit of a schism being set up between school and parent that is going to last once this pandemic is over?
Well, again, it's the government that have put that tension in the system between parents and schools. And, one of the things that, a number of schools are doing, and I can understand the logic of why, They want to have live lessons. So if a teacher's in the classroom, children in front of them, they'll broadcast that lesson effectively to the children who are working from home. And that places incredible demands on parents at home, because that means they have to have access to or the child has to have access to a device between particular hours. Now, if that parent's trying to work from home as well, that's an incredible demand. Primary school age children, undoubtedly, the majority will need some help and support from an adult at home to access those kind of online lessons via different platforms. We believe that remote learning should be resources that schools are directed to, perhaps things that can be downloaded, things that can be watched, resources that can be accessed outside of necessarily the school hours, that help parents at home manage when their child wants to engage with those educational resources. I mean, we're comfortable with the government's target of 3 hours of remote education a day. Absolutely no problem, but doesn't have to be between the hours of 9 and 3. Could it be 12 until, do an hour from 12 until 1 or 4 until 5? Give parents that flexibility. Don't tie them to live lessons. And of course, there are major GDPR and safeguarding issues about children being online and recording things at the home end, and who's in the room with them, who's not in the room with them. There are a whole range of safeguarding issues that schools need to be alive to in terms of live lessons.
Just very finally and briefly, if you could, please, Damien, you're taking part in a national meeting today of your union. What are the main concerns that you and your fellow members feel need to be addressed by government?
Well, the key concerns are, and our key ask at a national level across all the countries of the UK, are that teachers are prioritised for vaccines. That will allow teachers to get back in schools to return to normal as soon as possible. We're not saying we need to jump the queue in terms of the government's planned rollout for those that are most vulnerable. That's absolutely right. But the sooner we get the school workforce vaccinated, the sooner we can return to normal, and that's what our members want to do. Other key priorities are around ensuring schools have sufficient information and knowledge about keeping their schools safe and secure. Schools are poorly funded and have been for over 10 years. We need additional funding for additional staff. So let's bring in supply teacher colleagues to do some additional work and capacity to create those remote learning resources. Schools need to be funded for additional cleaning resources, for additional computer technology for the children to access at home. There's a whole range of issues that are right at the top of our agenda today about keeping our members safe in schools, having schools appropriately funded, and allowing children and young people to get back to school as safely and as quickly as possible.
Okay, Damien, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Appreciate your time. Damien McNulty is the Merseyside and Cheshire Executive Member for the NAS UWT.